Chapter 4 1982 Gogol's 14th birthday. Like most events in his life, it is another excuse for his parents to throw a party for their Bengali friends. His own friends from school were invited the previous day, a tame affair with pizzas that his father picked up on his way home from work, a baseball game watched together on television, some ping pong in the den. For the first time in his life, he has said no to the frosted cake, the box of Harlequin ice cream, the hot dogs in buns, the balloons and streamers taped to the walls. The other celebration, the Bengali one, is held on the closest Saturday to the actual date of his birth. As usual, his mother cooks for days beforehand, cramming the refrigerator with stacks of foil-covered trays. She makes sure to prepare his favorite things: lamb curry with lots of potatoes, latkes, thick chana dal with swollen brown raisins, pineapple chutney, sandwiches molded out of saffron-tinted ricotta cheese. All this is less stressful to her than the task of feeding a handful of American children, half of whom always claim they are allergic to milk, all of whom refuse to eat the crusts of their bread. Close to 40 guests come from 3 different states. Women are dressed in saris far more dazzling than the pants and polo shirts their husbands wear. A group of men sit in a circle on the floor and immediately start a game of poker. These are his mashis and meshos, his honorary uncles and aunts. They all bring their children. His parents' crowd does not believe in babysitters. As usual, Gogol is the oldest child in the group. He is too old to be playing hide-and-seek with 8-year-old Sonia and her ponytailed, gap-toothed friends, but not old enough to sit in the living room and discuss Reaganomics with his father and the rest of the husbands, or to sit around the dining room table, gossiping with his mother and the wives. The closest person to him in age is a girl named Maushumi, whose family recently moved to Massachusetts from England, and whose 13th birthday was celebrated in a similar fashion a few months ago. But Gogol and Maushumi have nothing to say to each other. Maushumi sits cross-legged on the floor, in glasses, with maroon plastic frames and a puffy, polka-dotted headband, holding back her thick, chin-length hair. In her lap is a Kelly green Bermuda bag with pink piping and wooden handles. Inside the bag is a tube of 7-Up flavored lip balms that she draws from time to time across her mouth. She is reading a well-thumbed paperback copy of Pride and Prejudice, while the other children, Gogol included, watch The Love Boat and Fantasy Island, piled together on top and across the sides of his parents' bed. Occasionally one of the children asks Maushumi to say something, anything, in her English accent. Sonia asks if she has ever seen Princess Diana on the street. "I detest American television," Maushimi eventually declares, to everyone's delight. then wanders into the hallway to continue her reading. Presents are opened when guests are gone. Gogol receives several dictionaries, several calculators, several cross pen and pencil sets, several ugly sweaters. His parents give him an Instamatic camera, a new sketchbook, colored pencils, and the mechanical pen he had asked for, and $20 to spend as he wishes. Sonia has made him a card with magic markers, on paper she has ripped out from one of his own sketchbooks, which says, "Happy birthday, Goggles," the name she insists on calling him instead of Dada. His mother sets aside the things he doesn't like, which is most everything, to give to his cousins the next time they go to India. Later that night, he is alone in his room listening to side 3 of the White Album on his parents' cast-off RCA turntable. The album is a present from his American birthday party, given to him by one of his friends at school. Born when the band was near death, Gogol is a passionate devotee of John, Paul, George, and Ringo. In recent years he has collected nearly all their albums, and the only thing tacked to the bulletin board on the back of his door is Lennon's obituary, already yellow and brittle, clipped from the Boston Globe. He sits cross-legged on the bed, hunched over the lyrics, when he hears a knock on the door. "Come in," he hollers, expecting it to be Sonia in her pajamas, asking if she can borrow his Magic 8-ball or his Rubik's Cube. He is surprised to see his father, standing in stocking feet, a small potbelly visible beneath his oat-colored sweater vest, his moustache turning grey. Gogol is especially surprised to see a gift in his father's hands. His father has never given him birthday presents, apart from whatever his mother buys. But this year, his father says, walking across the room to where Gogol is sitting, he has something special. The gift is covered in red and green and gold-striped paper, left over from Christmas the year before, taped awkwardly at the seams. It is obviously a book, thick hardcover, wrapped by his father's own hands. Gogol lifts the paper slowly, but in spite of this the tape leaves the scab. "The short stories of Nikolai Gogol," the jacket says. Inside, the price has been snipped away on the diagonal. "I ordered it from the bookstore, just for you," his father says, his voice raised in order to be heard over the music. It's difficult to find in hardcover these days. It's a British publication, a very small press. It took 4 months to arrive. I hope you like it." Gogol leans over towards the stereo to turn the volume down a bit. He would have preferred The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or even another copy of The Hobbit, to replace the one he lost last summer in Calcutta, left on the rooftop of his father's house in Alipore and snatched away by crows. In spite of his father's occasional suggestions, he has never been inspired to read a word of Gogol, or any Russian writer for that matter. He has never been told why he really was named Gogol. He doesn't know about the accident that nearly killed his father. He thinks his father's limp is the consequence of an injury playing soccer in his teens. He's been told only half the truth about Gogol, that his father is a fan. "Thanks, Baba," Gogol says, eager to return to his lyrics. Lately he has been lazy addressing his parents in English, though they continue to speak to him in Bengali. Occasionally he wanders through the house with his running sneakers on. At dinner he sometimes uses a fork. His father is still standing there in his room, watching expectantly, his hands clasped together behind his back. So Gogol flips the book. A single picture at the front, on smoother paper than the rest of the pages, shows a pencil drawing of the author, sporting a velvet jacket, a billowy white shirt, and cravat. The face is fox-like, with small, dark eyes, a thin, neat moustache, an extremely large, pointy nose. Dark hair slants steeply across his forehead and is plastered to either side of his head, and there is a disturbing, vaguely supercilious smile set into long, narrow lips. Gogol Ganguly is relieved to see no resemblance. True, his nose is long, but not so long. His hair dark, but surely not so dark. His skin pale, but certainly not so pale. The style of his own hair is altogether different. Thick, beetle-like, bangs that conceal his brows. Gogol Ganguly wears a Harvard sweatshirt and grey Levi's corduroys. He has worn a tie once in his life to attend a friend's bar mitzvah. No, he concludes confidently, there is no resemblance at all. For by now he has come to hate questions pertaining to his name, hates having constantly to explain. He hates having to tell people that it doesn't mean anything in Indian. He hates having to wear a name tag on his sweater at Model United Nations Day at school. He even hates signing his name at the bottom of his drawings in art class. He hates that his name is both absurd and obscure, that it has nothing to do with who he is, that it is neither Indian nor American, but of all things Russian. He hates having to live with it, with a pet name turned good name, day after day, second after second. He hates seeing it on the brown paper sleeve of the National Geographic subscription his parents got for him for his birthday the year before, and perpetually listed in the honor roll printed in the town's newspaper. At times his name, an entity shapeless and weightless, manages, nevertheless, to distress him physically, like the scratchy tag of a shirt he has been forced to permanently wear. At times he wishes he could disguise it, shorten it somehow, the way the other Indian boy in his school, Jayadev, has gotten people to call him Jay. But Gogol, already short and catchy, resists mutation. Other boys his age have begun to court girls already, asking them to go to the movies or the pizza parlor, but he cannot imagine saying, "Hi, it's Gogol," under the potentially romantic circumstances. He cannot imagine this at all. From the little he knows about Russian writers, It dismays him that his parents chose the weirdest nickname. Leo or Anton he could have lived with. Alexander, shortened to Alex, he would have greatly preferred. But Gogol sounds ludicrous to his ears, lacking dignity or gravity. What dismays him most is the irrelevance of it all. Gogol, he has been tempted to tell his father, on more than one occasion, was his father's favourite author, not his. Then again, it's his own fault. He could have been known, at school at least, as Nikhil. That one day, that first day of kindergarten, which he no longer remembers, could have changed everything. He could have been Gogol only 50% of the time. Like his parents when they went to Calcutta, he could have had an alternate identity, a B-side to the self. We tried, his parents explained to friends and relatives who ask why their son lacks a good name. But he would only respond to Gogol. The school insisted. His parents would add, "We live in a country where a president is called Jimmy." Really, there was nothing we could do. Thanks again, Gogol tells his father now. He shuts the cover and swings his legs over the edge of the bed to put the book away on his shelves. But his father takes the opportunity to sit beside him on the bed. For a moment he rests his hand on Gogol's shoulder. The boy's body in recent months has grown tall, nearly as tall as Ashok's. The childhood pudginess has vanished from his face. The voice has begun to deepen, is slightly husky now. It occurs to Ashok that he and his son probably wear the same size shoe. In the glow of the bedside lamp, Ashok notices a scattered down emerging on his son's upper lip. An Adam's apple is prominent on his neck. The pale hands, like Ashima's, are long and thin. Ashok wonders how closely Gogol resembles himself at this age. But there are no photographs to document Ashok's childhood. Not until his passport, not until his life in America, does visual documentation exist. On the night table Ashok can see a deodorant, a tube of Clearasil. He lifts the book from where it lies on the bed between them, running a hand protectively over the cover. I took the liberty of reading it first. It has been many years since I have read these stories. I hope you don't mind. No problem, says Gogol. I feel a special kinship with Gogol, Ashok says, more than with any other writer. Do you know why? You like his stories. Apart from that, he spent most of his adult life outside his homeland, like me. Gogol nods. Right. And there is another reason. The music ends and there is silence, but then Gogol flips the record, turning the volume up on Revolution 1. What's that? Gogol says, a bit impatiently. Ashok looks around the room. He notices the Lenin obituary pinned to the bulletin board, and then a cassette of classical Indian music he had bought for Gogol months ago after a concert at Kresge, still sealed in its wrapper. He sees a pile of birthday cards scattered on the carpet, and remembers a hot August day 14 years ago in Cambridge when he held his son for the first time. Ever since that day, the day he became a father, the memory of his accident has receded, diminishing over the years. Though he will never forget that night, it no longer lurks persistently in his mind, stalking him in the same way. It no longer looms over his life, darkening it without warning as it used to. Instead, it is affixed firmly to a distant time, to a place far from Pemberton Road. Today, his son's birthday is a day to honor life, not brushes with the death. And so, for now, Ashok decides to keep the explanation of his son's name to himself. No other reason. Good night, he says to Gogol, getting up from the bed. At the door he pauses, turns around. Do you know what Dostoevsky once said? Gogol shakes his head. We all come out of Gogol's overcoat. What's that supposed to mean? It will make sense to you one day. Many happy returns of the day. Gogol gets up and shuts the door behind his father, who has the annoying habit of leaving it partly open. He fastens the lock on the knob for good measure, then wedges the book on a high shelf between 2 volumes of the Hardy Boys. He settles down again with his lyrics on the bed when something occurs to him. This writer he is named after, Gogol, isn't his first name. His first name is Nikolai. Not only does Gogol Gongoli have a pet name turned good name, but also a last name turned first name. And so it occurs to him that no one he knows in the world, in Russia or India or America or anywhere, shares his name, not even the source of his namesake. The following year, Ashok is up for a sabbatical, and Gogol and Sonia are informed that they will be going to Calcutta for 8 months. When his parents tell him, one evening after dinner, Gogol thinks they are joking. But then they tell them that the tickets have already been booked, the plans already made. Think of it as a long vacation, Ashok and Ashima say to their crestfallen children. But Gogol knows that 8 months is no vacation. He dreads the thought of 8 months without a room of his own, without his records, his stereo, without friends. In Gogol's opinion, 8 months in Calcutta is practically like moving there, a possibility that until now has never even remotely crossed his mind. Besides, he's a sophomore now. What about school? He points out. His parents remind him that in the past his teachers have never minded Gogol missing school now and again. They have given him math and language workbooks that he has ignored, and when he returns a month or 2 later, they praise him for keeping up with things. But Gogol's guidance counselor expresses concern when Gogol informs him that he will be missing the entire second half of the 10th grade. A meeting is called with Ashima and Ashok to discuss the options. The guidance counselor asks if it's possible to enroll Gogol in one of the American schools in India. But the nearest one is in Delhi, over 800 miles from Calcutta. The guidance counselor suggests that perhaps Gogol could join his parents later, after the school year ends, stay with a relative until June. "We have no relatives in this country," Ashima informs the guidance counselor. "That is why we are going to India in the first place." And so, barely 4 months of 10th grade, after an early supper of rice and boiled potatoes and eggs that his mother insists they eat, even though they will be served another supper on the plane, he is off. Geometry and US history textbooks packed into his suitcase, which is locked along with the others, with padlocks, and bound with ropes, labeled with the address of his father's house in Alipur. Gogol always finds the labels unsettling. The sight of them making him feel that his family doesn't really live on Pemberton Road. They depart Christmas Day, arriving with their massive collection of luggage to Logan when they should be home opening gifts. Sonia is morose, running a slight fever from her typhoid shot, still expecting, when she enters the living room in the morning, to see a tree trimmed with lights. But the only thing in the living room is debris, price tags from all the gifts they've packed for their relatives, plastic hangers, cardboard from shirts. They shiver as they leave the house, with coats and gloves. They won't need them where they are going, and it will be August by the time they return. The house has been rented to some American students his father has found through the university, an unmarried couple named Barbara and Steve. In the airport, Gogol stands in the check-in line with his father, who is dressed in a jacket and tie, clothes he still thinks to wear when riding on planes. 4 in the family, his father says when it is their turn, producing 2 US passports and 2 Indian ones. 2 Hindu meals, please. On the plane, Gogol is seated several rows behind his parents, and Sonia in another section altogether. His parents are distressed by this, but Gogol is secretly pleased to be on his own. When the stewardess approaches with her cart of beverages, he tries his luck and asks for a Bloody Mary, tasting the metallic bite of alcohol for the first time in his life. Then they fly first to London and then to Calcutta via Dubai. When they fly over the Alps, his father gets out of his seat to take pictures of the snow-capped peaks through the window. On past trips, it used to thrill Gogol that they were flying over so many countries. Again and again he would trace their itinerary on the map in the seat pocket below his tray and feel somehow adventurous. But this time it frustrates him that it is to Calcutta that they always go. Apart from visiting relatives, there was nothing to do in Calcutta. He's already been to the planetarium and the zoo gardens and the Victoria Memorial a dozen times. They have never been to Disneyland or the Grand Canyon. Only once, when their connecting flight in London was delayed, did they leave Heathrow and take a double-decker bus tour of the city. On the final leg of the trip, there are only a few non-Indians left on the plane. Bengali conversation fills the cabin. His mother has already exchanged addresses with the family across the aisle. Before landing, she slips into the bathroom and changes, miraculously, in that minuscule space, into a fresh sari. A final meal is served, an herbed omelette topped with a slice of grilled tomato. Gogol savors each mouthful, aware that for the next 8 months nothing will taste quite the same. Through the window he sees palm trees and banana trees, a damp, drab sky. The wheels touch the ground, the aircraft is sprayed with disinfectant, and then they descend into the tarmac of Dum Dum Airport, breathing in the sour, stomach-turning, early morning air. They stop to wave back at the row of relatives waving madly from the observation deck. Little cousins propped up on uncle's shoulders. As usual, the Gangulis are relieved to learn that all their luggage has arrived together and unmolested, and relieved further when customs doesn't make a fuss. And then the frosted doors slide open, and once again they are officially there, no longer in transit, swallowed by hugs and kisses and pinched cheeks and smiles. There are endless names Gogol and Sonia must remember to say, not aunt this and uncle that, but terms far more specific. Mashi and Pishi, Mama and Maima, Kaku and Jetu, to signify whether they are related on their mother's or father's side, by marriage or by blood. Ashima, now Monu, weeps with relief, and Ashok, now Meetu, kisses his brothers on both cheeks, holds their heads in his hands. Gogol and Sonia know these people, but they do not feel close to them as their parents do. Within minutes, before their eyes, Ashok and Ashima slip into bolder, less complicated versions of themselves. Their voices louder, their smiles wider, revealing a confidence Gogol and Sonia never see on Pemberton Road. "I'm scared, Goggles," Sonia whispers to her brother in English, seeking his hand and refusing to let go. They are ushered into a waiting taxi and down VIP Road, past a colossal landfill and into the heart of North Calcutta. Gogol is accustomed to the scenery, yet he still stares at the short, dark men pulling rickshaws and the crumbling buildings side by side with fretwork balconies, hammers and sickles painted on their facades. He stares at the commuters who cling precariously to trams and buses, threatening at any moment to spill onto the street. and at the families who boil rice and shampoo their hair on the sidewalk. At his mother's flat on Amherst Street, where his uncle's family lives now, neighbors look from their windows and roofs as Gogol and his family emerge from the taxi. They stand out in their bright, expensive sneakers, American haircuts, backpacks slung over one shoulder. Once inside, he and Sonia are given cups of Horlicks, plates of syrupy, spongy rosogullas, for which they have no appetite, but which they dutifully eat. They have their feet traced onto pieces of paper, and a servant is sent to Bata to bring back rubber slippers for them to wear indoors. The suitcases are unlocked and unbound, and all the gifts are unearthed, admired, tried on for size. In the days that follow, they adjust once again to sleeping under a mosquito net, bathing by pouring tin cups of water over their heads. In the mornings, Gogol watches his cousins put on their white and blue school uniforms and strap water bottles across their chests. His aunt, Uma Maima, presides in the kitchen all morning, harassing the servants as they squat by the drain, scouring the dirty dishes with ash, or pound heaps of spices on slabs that resemble tombstones. At the Ganguly house in Alipur, he sees the room in which they would have lived had his parents remained in India, the ebony four-poster bed on which they would have slept all together, the armoire in which they would have stored their clothes. Instead of renting an apartment of their own, they spend 8 months with various relatives, shuttling from home to home. They stay in Baligunge, Toligunge, Salt Lake, Butch Butch, ferried by endless bumpy taxi rides back and forth through the city. Every few weeks there is a different bed to sleep in, another family to live with, a new schedule to learn. Depending on where they are, they eat sitting on red clay or cement or terrazzo floors, or at marble-topped tables, too cold to rest their elbows on. Their cousins and aunts and uncles ask them about life in America, about what they eat for breakfast, about their friends at school. They look at the pictures of their house on Pemberton Road. Carpets in the bathroom, they say. Imagine that. His father keeps busy with his research, delivering lectures at Jadavpur University. His mother shops in Newmarket and goes to movies and sees her old school friends. For 8 months she does not set foot in a kitchen. She wanders freely around a city in which Gogol, in spite of his many visits, has no sense of direction. Within 3 months, Sonia has read each of her Laura Ingalls Wilder books a dozen times. Gogol occasionally opens up one of his textbooks, bloated from the heat. Though he's bought his sneakers with him, hoping to keep up with the cross-country training, it is impossible on these cracked, congested, chock-a-block streets to run. The one day he tries, Uma Maima, watching from the rooftop, sends a servant to follow him so that Gogol doesn't get lost. It's easier to surrender to confinement. On Amherst Street, Gogol sits at his grandfather's drawing table, poking through a tin full of dried-out nibs. He sketches what he sees through the iron window bars, the crooked skyline, the courtyards, the cobblestone square where he watches maids filling brass urns at the tube well, people passing under the soiled canopies of rickshaws, hurrying home with parcels in the rain. On the roof one day, with its view of Howrah Bridge in the distance, he smokes a beedi tightly rolled in olive green leaves with one of the servants. Of all the people who surround them at practically all times, Sonia is his only ally, the only person to speak and sit and see as he does. While the rest of the household sleeps, he and Sonia fight over the Walkman, over the melting collection of tapes Gogol recorded back in his room at home. From time to time, they privately admit to excruciating cravings for hamburgers, or a slice of pepperoni pizza, or a cold glass of milk. They are surprised in the summer to learn that their father has planned a trip for them, first to Delhi to visit an uncle, and then to Agra to see the Taj Mahal. It will be Gogol and Sonia's first journey outside of Calcutta, their first time on an Indian train. They depart from Howrah, that immense, soaring, echoing station, where barefoot coolies in red cotton shirts pile the Gangulis' Samsonite luggage on their heads, where entire families sleep, covered in rows on the floor. Gogol is aware of the dangers involved. His cousins have told him about the bandits that lurk in Bihar, so that his father wears a special garment under his shirt, with hidden pockets to carry cash, and his mother and Sonia remove their gold jewels. On the platform they walk from compartment to compartment looking for their 4 names on the passenger list pasted to the outside wall of the train. They settle onto their blue berths, the top 2 swinging down from the walls when it is time to sleep, and held in place by sliding latches during the day. A conductor gives them their bedding, heavy white cotton sheets and thin woolen blankets. In the morning they look at the scenery through the tinted window of their air-conditioned car. As a result, the view, no matter how bright the day, is gloomy and grey.